All right, then let's start this. Now, we're going to go into a little bit about code systems. I would like to state for the record, I am not a vocabulary expert, not even close. I'm not in the top 1,000. So I have gone through this, but what I'd like to do is there are people in this room who are very well versed. They've worked with the various code systems, they've worked with the value sets. So I may open up questions to the floor because it'll be easier than me trying to do it. I'm trying not to make Lloyd answer all the questions because that's not fair to him. But I'm sure there are lots of people in this room who have worked with this stuff a lot better than I have. I just got, the short stick. No. Okay. Start off with the FHIR code systems define the codes that are used in the value sets. And we have a mix of internal and external. External, RX norms, SNOMED, LOINC, so on and so forth, CTS, HICPICS, all of the 1,000 code systems that are out there. The ones that are created by FHIR, you will see them. They are normally prefixed with hl7.org/FHIR, so it'll be a code system in FHIR. You have the FHIR licensed or imported codes. They're all done through terminology.hl7.org. You have access to most of the V3 tables. I don't know if all of them are there, but most of the V3 tables are there, and same as the V2 tables, and you can see that the format for getting them is through these URLs. This is what you put in the system element in your code systems or in your value sets, is these URLs, and of course, there are pages that say all of the code systems that HL7 or FHIR recognizes. You can go through theirs. Where possible, use an HL7 or licensed or code system. Don't create your own if you don't have to. Be lazy. Let somebody else do all the work. It's always nice to let someone else do the work for you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
On your first bullet on the last slide,
Yep.
it says external such as, so SNOMED would go under your third bullet, right? SNOMED would
Yes,
you would
SNOMED.
find it under code systems,
Yeah,
for
you'll actually.
example?
Yeah.
Okay.
CTS is true external things that aren't really pulled in yet. Okay. Again, big point here. Yeah. Oh wait, we have a question.
With regard to external code systems, do we differentiate between those that are external and standard versus those that are external and extensions to standards, for example?
Can you give me an example?
So in some of our initial work that we've done at the AMA around the self-measured blood pressure use case, we've done we have a SNOMED extension, and we've created extension concepts in relation to that use case, and have also created value sets in that extension. And so we've created FHIR value set resources that contain those extension concepts and international versions of concepts. And I guess I'm just not sure how that extending external code systems fits into that model.
There's no generic answer for code systems plural. There's a specific answer for SNOMED, which is that each extension has an addition URL, a URL that identifies the extension. And so then you say in your value set that you're based on a particular version of SNOMED, which refers to the extension that you distribute in your RF2 format. At the moment, and someone else has already asked me about this today, at the moment the FHIR publishing infrastructure has no way to leverage the SNOMED extension itself, so it'll just be like more unknown content, and it'll bitch that it's not valid SNOMED concepts, but it's work in progress. So we want to be able to support SNOMED extensions, but any other code system, it's always a code system specific discussion.
If I could just follow with one other question about extension. So value sets that use codes from LOINC, for example, so just out of the box LOINC codes, but we've created our own value set of those codes, which is an extension of sorts, I guess, and we've packaged those as value set resources as well.
Actually, we'll
Define
get
your own
in,
value sets, it's fine.
yeah, we'll actually get into, we're going to go into SNOMED and LOINC specifically because those are the big ones we need to worry about. So there's more to come. But I just wanted to say it again, do not create a code system if you don't have to. Find one. I mean, like I said, SNOMED and LOINC will cover most of everything because there are people who spend their entire lives trying to find a hole in SNOMED and patch it.
But in fact, that's not true. SNOMED and LOINC between them will cover most of your clinical code requirements. But a lot of the code requirements we need are workflow-based stuff, and they don't cover them, and that's where the pain's going to be.
Okay, so starting off with SNOMED, again, not going to go into depth because tomorrow morning there is a lovely half day on terminology, and B, I'm not that smart. So SNOMED CT has two common sets of implicit. The way you do it to break them up is by subsumption or by reference set. You can also use the expression constraints to do it. The implicit value set capability lets you set a single URL to serve as the value set definition rather than having to worry about hundreds of them. It serves as the basis for your value set. If your value set exists with an identifier that confirms to the ones I showed you earlier, you can also use the URL patterns that are specific for SNOMED. By reference as URL or literally just taking specific codes and putting them in your value set. Now, for the system designation, you use the base URL of SNOMED info/SCT, or if you have one specific to your edition, so for the US, for the Australian, German, Canadian, so on and so forth. And that they're all specified by SNOMED, so you need to go look at their their website and get the specific URL for your subset that you're working with. And then after that, you have the query portion that has the scope of the content. Now, subsumption, what a wonderful word that is. Includes all concept ideas that have a transitive is a relationship with the concept ideas provided by the value, including the concept itself. That's a long way of saying everything that's in this group. So is a 42200969902 dosage instruction fragment. You're saying all the ones that are part of this grouping, I want those. So is a section of that. All right? And I have, if you look, here's a nice example, HL7 org FHIR value set administration method codes, XML.html actually gives you it's actually a way you can look it up and look at one that's doing exactly that. All right? Again, if you have questions, I'll do my best, but chances are I will open up to the floor. By reference set, that's member of. So you're looking at those that are part of a set of codes, so it's a member of this grouping. Now, and that's the operation value. I'll show you what using an actual operation value is a little bit when I show you a sample. Now, what? Did I move forward? Yes, I did. Okay. According to SNOMED, using the SNOMED info/SCT means an unspecified version or edition. All right, so you're not saying the international version from 2017, 02, 05. You're saying whatever's current. So you are taking the full set. If you do not specify it, terminology service shall, that's in all caps for a reason, shall use the latest version available for the default edition or international edition if there's nothing else available. The recommended string template to use for a specific version you want. Okay? Substituting the appropriate module for SCT ID and effective time is SNOMED info SCT with the SCT version, so the subset you want. So if it's the Australian version or whatnot, then version and the timestamp. So 2017, 02, however it works. Okay, you end up with a fairly long one, but that lets you specify the exact version of SNOMED you want to use in your system. Clear as mud? Okay. More information, there's a wonderful page that goes into a lot more detail on the HL7 FHIR SNOMED usage. Also, SNOMED has great documentation. That much of it I read before doing this and confused the hell out of myself. No. The big thing is if you're working in the international realm, do not bind, do not make it fixed for SNOMED, okay? Make it extensible, make it, do not use extensible, do not use required, sorry. Because some jurisdictions simply can't use SNOMED without a lot of licensing and a lot of strangeness. And, well, and a lot of money. There's no such thing as money in the modern world, I checked. Countries like the US and Canada, we can use SNOMED because there's a licensing in place. Other places in Europe and beyond simply can't use it without paying exorbitant license fees. So if you can avoid using that when you're working on a universal, then please do so. All right? Do not rely on these, or at least don't bind to them if it needs to work in a country where licensing may be a problem. Okay. So just to give you some examples, so to get the overall, I've got a few examples. Here's the URIs. So the SNOMED CT International Edition. A lot of zeros. A lot. But we also have, if you're looking for the 2013 edition, for some obscure reason you want something that's 6 years old, I don't know why you would, you just say /version and the date. The Australian version has a much different number, SNOMED CT SE, different number still. You can keep going. All these numbers are available on the SNOMED website. No? Sorry, yes. If you're starting to extend or go beyond, I meant the national versions and the very published ones. Okay. As I said, this is going to be a very overview. Tomorrow is where you're actually going to learn a lot about it, but I wanted to let people know that there was some information here. There we go. LOINC. The biggest thing is LOINC requires copyright. In your system, there is a copyright element. You're required to put the LOINC copyright. I didn't put it on the slide because it's 3 or 4 sentences long and is easily available. When you're setting it up, the URI is always just loinc.org. That's how you identify that you are using LOINC codes. One of the benefits for LOINC is that it actually has answer sets and answer string IDs for use in forms and questionnaires. So you can actually say, for this system on this questionnaire, here are the possible answers, and it gives you a value set or an answer set. So it's a lot simpler than having to go through and say, these are all the possible answers, because they're already set aside. Have you got your hand up, or you're just stretching? Okay, good. Good, because I was getting worried. As with SNOMED, there's tons of information on the LOINC site, and even more on the HL7 FHIR. As you can see, it's FHIR LOINC HTML will give you all kinds of information. Really getting into it is beyond the scope, simply because everybody's going to have their own use case. There is also the LOINC browser, which lets you go through and search for specific codes that you need for your use case. So if you are trying to find a specific LOINC code, you can go to the search engine, and I will. Okay, let me just drag this over. Oh, there we go. So this is search.loinc.org, and it lets you go in and pull up, search for what codes you need. Now, anybody got a favorite thing they like to work with? No? That's really small. As you can see, it comes up with all the LOINC codes that match the very generic term I just typed in. So anything from what medication are you taking to the actual study you may have done. If you're looking for it, it's there because it's full. If you do it as vague as I just did, you're going to get your arm ripped off with number of codes. You can then click on the code and see that it is in, for this one, relation with diabetes problem, it's in the patient system. Okay, and all the information you need, as well as the history of it. So last updated and when it's been used. All right. I should have shown you the SNOMED one while I was at. Hold on while I get to the SNOMED browser, and we'll do the same trick.
Actually, it might be in the weeds, so you can tell me to leave it for tomorrow. But if you use a LOINC code that has both the question and the answer set, but you're using it, and I don't know if FHIR uses it as the question the way CDA does, because in CDA you use it as a question. If you use it as the question, do you have to bind your answers to that LOINC value set, or could you use a different value set? Does that make sense? Yes, it makes sense.
Yes, the question does make sense, yes.
The answer is it depends on LOINC. So sometimes when LOINC defines an answer set, they say you shall use, and in which case if you want to be conformant, you shall use. Otherwise you're not really legitimately using that LOINC code. On the other hand, if they make a suggestion and you look at the suggestion and you go, yeah, no, you can absolutely use something else.
Where does it say that? Because I don't think I've ever seen it where it's done a binding like that, unless I'm just missing it. It must say it on the page.
Yeah.
I'll have to do a search. Okay.
All right.
But I don't think you could make up a different set of answers. I mean, you could choose SNOMED codes, but I don't think you can make up a different set of answers if you're using a LOINC code.
My understanding,
Five possible answers you
my
can
under,
make up.
my understanding is that LOINC differentiates, and sometimes when they define answer codes, they are not mandated, and other times they are. I am not a LOINC guru. Clem's coming, so go hit him up is probably your best bet.
Question, so save it for tomorrow? Or who's coming?
Yeah.
Clem.
Well,
Got it.
I was talking about Clem. He's not here tomorrow. He'll be here next week. He will definitely know. Julie would probably have an answer for you though tomorrow.
Yeah, the people involved in the Terminology Authority are really, really good experts at this. Unfortunately, they're not here.
Terminology authority, is that included within Angel 7?
Well, I will cover that. It's nice, I actually have slides to answer some of these questions. This is the SNOMED browser. It does open up with its license agreement, which you have to say, okay, yes, I won't copy this slide, do this where I'm not allowed to do this. You also will find that many of the national authorities have their own. So there's a US one. I tend to rely on the UK one because I'm in Canada and there's no good reason for that, but I do. But the various browsers work differently. Also, Google works really well. If you type SNOMED and the concept you want, Google's a great way to find the SNOMED code because they're not only published everywhere, they're just documented everywhere. And, oh, hey, Wayne. This one works the same. You go to the front, you type in 3 characters. If you're really strange, I don't know why I keep using diabetes, but I do. And it comes up with the actual code for it, and you can go into it and find find the basis of it, as well as the family history and all the codes that go around it. Use the browsers, like I said, for SNOMED, Google is often your friend, but you will run into the fact that you will run into a UK code that doesn't exist. If you're doing social determinants of health, there are far more in the UK set than there are available in the US. If you are doing various things, the US, of course, is trying to map to ICD-10. I have a hard time saying that. So therefore, their set is constrained differently. Make sure you're using, when you're doing a search, you're using the right search and you're using the right set. Can I go back to my presentation just by minimizing this? Yes. All right. Now, LOINC is very specific about how their codes are formatted. So because they hold very tight copyright and very tight licensing, you must use them the way they are. A LOINC code starts with LP. I don't know what somebody else remember for the LOINC part. Yeah. And the check digit at the end. And following along the license, codes may be in the following ways in filter properties, structure definitions, and of course in a concept map where you're mapping between LOINC codes and some other magic that you wish to worry about.
I have never seen a LOINC code without you.
You know,
That's not a LOINC code, that's a LOINC part code.
yeah, sorry.
So it is possible when you're filtering LOINC, when you're finding a value set,
Yeah.
that you might want to say, for example, find me all of the LOINC codes that have a focus of patient or a focus of blood or whatever, or that have this particular timing aspect. And to refer to those LOINC parts, you're going to be using this. This
LP
is
code.
super deep esoteric stuff, though.
Okay, so we'll skip forward. All right. As I said earlier, LOINC allocates answer lists and answer strings for use in forms and questionnaires to make life simple. I don't know if you can read that. It's pretty faint. But LOINC answer lists are just a set of value set identifiers. And what you can see is the compose section where you actually put them in. So you have, platelet. Oh, I'm not even going to try to read that word. I should have practiced that more. And platelet clump at the bottom as defining the concept. Now, LOINC, because of the way it is, has a lot of extra properties beyond the basic set. So ways of finding or restricting, constraining the codes. These will be used in a code system where you're using LOINC in FHIR. So because you can define it on several dimensions, right? You can constrain it by the kind of property, time, system, scale type, so all kinds of ways to make it very specific to your use case. There's also the arbitrary classification for terms, arbitrary because LOINC just decided they fit together well. Consumer name, which is sort of new. I don't know if it's still beta, but it's fairly new. Provide a test name that healthcare consumers will recognize rather than something that only a clinician with 22 years of experience will understand. Laboratory class, so it's labs or clinical, claims attachments or surveys. Order observation provides an idea, where you can read it. In document section, classification whether this LOINC code can be used as full documents, a section of document, or both. Filtering on them is more fun because you can use those to filter. So you can use the LOINC property using the equals or full regex. Regular expressions, for those who love Perl regular expressions, you can use them to actually constrain. It's a wonderful system. If you don't like regular expressions, find somebody who does. The third-party copyright allows for use of inclusion or exclusion of LOINC codes that include third-party copyright notices. So if you're looking for something that has extra copyright, not just LOINCs, and that's a straight equals. And I'll show you what these look like in a second. And of course, the excuse me a second. Multi-axial hierarchy, there we go, using codes based on the parent-child relationships. So, and that's a straight equals this. So now, it is never okay to use values from a code system without permission and or attribution, especially in LOINC's code. You must put the copyright statement in. Doing so can get everybody in trouble, including HL7. So it's not just you that will be hit. If you are using a code, please attribute it. Please make sure you have permission to use it. In North America, if you're using a SNOMED code, that's kind of okay to using your IG. In other countries, no. If you use LOINC codes without the copyright statement, you can be in, that's a problem. If you're using codes from a set that is totally not licensed with FHIR, you need to get permission. This is their intellectual property. This is theirs. You can't use it without their okay. It's not okay. If there is no code system, if you need a code system, it's not a code system FHIR or terminology HL7, and you can't use it via OID because there's no defined OID, it's time to contact the HTA, the HL7 Terminology Authority. They're a wonderful bunch. The Terminology Authority is a very recent group in HL7 terms, which means they haven't been around for 33 years. They are working to formalize the process for new code systems, for bringing in new information into terminology. Right now, they're primarily working with the vocabulary work group. So, if you need a code system, work with your vocabulary facilitator for the whatever working group is your sponsor. Or work with the vocabulary work group to bring these code systems in. It may not be a fast process. I'm currently trying to get HICPICs brought into HL7, and yeah, I'm the third one to take up arms against this fight.
When you say brought in, does that mean that essentially that if you use if you do an HL7 valid IG, you would be covered by a copyright agreement?
More brought in meaning it'll be brought in the same way that SNOMED is. So there's a licensing agreement, and things can be easily brought,
As a
used.
licensing agreement. No, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if I develop an IG, by definition, do I automatically, if it's an HL7 IG, does it automatically fall under the HL7 licensing agreement and I can use them?
I believe so, yes.
It depends entirely on what the licensing agreement says. So in the case of SNOMED, we have the right to publish the SNOMED codes in US IGs. And there's agreed language that we include that indicates the implementer community, by the way, if you're going to implement this IG, you must be in a jurisdiction that has a SNOMED license, or you must buy one. Here's where you go. And presumably, if we got permission from CPT, it would be something along those same lines. And if you don't adhere to the rules that are listed in the license, then you are not covered, and HL7 is not going to protect you if AMA or anybody else comes after you and says, hey, you're violating our IP. So from an IG publication perspective, we can have license to publish. That's distinct from license to use. We try very hard, and the general principle for international implementation guides is we don't publish IGs that require the use of terminologies that aren't free for everybody. In the US, the rules are not quite the same, and what is free for use in the US is not the same as what's free for use everywhere.
Now, as I said, the HTA is still young. I reached out to them to ask for the formal process of working with the HTA to do this. They said, get stuffed. They said it nicer than that, but as of yet, there is no formal process. So I'm going to go through the process as it exists, and hopefully the HTA will work with this. They have a nice form that I have no idea how to fill out. No, you get it from the HTA on Confluence. That's where I found it. Right now, again, you're working with vocabulary work groups, so you're going to follow the process. Open a GForge ticket, requesting that a code system be added. Assign the reviewing work group to be vocab. Then magic happens, and then it works. No. Submit that to the HTA, let them know that it exists, get the content request form to them, which you can download off the HTA's Confluence page. It's right on the front page, it's large, it's friendly. The form itself looks like it should be easy to fill out, but I couldn't quite work out what went in some of the fields. Maybe somebody who's been doing this longer will figure it out. The HTA says they will review the content and get back to you with any concerns, and that's, of course, a loop, because you will answer their questions, they'll come back with more questions, and eventually it'll all work out. And then the form gets approved by the HTA and then can be submitted with a formal harmonization proposal. Of course, that harmonization proposals are done with your work group's vocabulary facilitator, and of course they should be able to answer more questions because that's what they do. Okay, clear as mud? Questions? Comments? Yes?
No, why would you want them to do this?
If there's an external code system like CPT, like HCPCS, like some specialized code, yes, some specialized code system that is not yet licensed to be used in FHIR, or has not been incorporated into FHIR, or you just really think it's pretty and want it to be part of FHIR. That's when you want to bring it in. You need to get HL7 a license so that it can actually be used. At this point,
So if you have, like, NCI has a lot of codes, okay, do you have to have it approved by HL7 to use it in the FHIR message?
it depends how it's licensed. So if an organization says their code system is open to use, it's public domain, I can't imagine anybody who ever will, but if they did, then obviously it's not a problem. However, most have very restrictive licenses because they're intellectual property. So you need to make sure that HL7 has been okayed to use it so that you can use it within yours.
Well, you said you need to make sure HL7 has an okay. What if you as an agency have a license? Can you put it in, or that depends on your license?
It depends on your license.
Them, I guess.
The issue is,
Check with them.
remember, just because you put it in your IG doesn't mean the people who are implementing your IG have that access to that license. They may need to run out and get their own.
No, right.
So,
I'm thinking it depends on your own license agreement with
Yes.
that particular standards.
yes,
Example.
if you're not publishing through HL7, then you need some other arrangements, which is whatever arrangements you have. There's two parts to this. The first is that in order to use a code system with FHIR, you actually need to have an agreement about how that works. You know, what the URLs are and what are valid codes and what are valid displays. And that's the first part that HTA gets involved with. And if you have a code system that you are publishing, you can just go ahead and make up those things yourself and describe them. But if it's not yours, you're not the authority, you should work with the authority, and really that's better done through HL7 so that we can publish it in the core spec rather than having different publishers make different rules about code systems. So that's the first part, is just how does the code system work? And it's been hard for us to get code system authorities to understand that we don't want to publish their code system and steal it from them. We just want to actually help people want to use it by telling them how it works. And they get all like, you can't steal our IP, and we just want to tell people how it works. So if you ever have these conversations, we just want to help people understand how to use your IP so you can sell more of it. And it just seems remarkably hard to have that discussion so that people know how it works. But we're starting to get progress now. Then the second part is, the licensing part. So if you're working through HL7, HL7 needs to have a license to publish the guide, and that's not the same as the implementers having a license. If you're publishing through IHE, then IHE need the arrangement. If you're publishing through yourself, then you need the arrangement. Given the number of arrangements that we have in place already, it's probably starting to get to be a outright argument for publishing through HL7 as an accelerator, because we have a lot of arrangements in place that have taken years to get in place. It's hard work. So that's the two parts to where the terminology authority gets involved. But if you look at this, if you actually look at this process, you'll see that this process is even further behind in our normal maturity model. They're assuming that you have a harmonization proposal. In fact, they're assuming that you're not writing an IG that's outside, that's not a core HL7 business. So this is work in progress for me with the terminology authority to get them to understand that our breadth of operations are expanding, and so our processes have to follow. And these guys are not there with us yet on this.
They are working on it.
They're working on
I
it.
did
If
get
you
that
could
information.
go back a couple of slides, I think it is. Yeah, one more slide. I just wanted to talk about an issue related to this. So we're pretty hard-ass about value sets and code systems, right? We're just pounding the table going, you will use the code system, you make up your own value sets, but you've got to respect the source code system. And so many people use terminology, just go, hey, I'm making up my own list of codes, I'll just grab the LOINC code or the SNOMED code or the RxNorm code and put it in my code system. And then I'll use my code system with their code and I'll just magically know that that's what I'm doing. And we've said, no, you just don't do that. You don't do that. You use the code system, you use the underlying URL, it's their stuff, they own it, you refer to it, you can use that in your value sets. And we don't have any flexibility on that. You will do it that way. And yet, that's kind of procedurally tough. You know, you're like, I don't even know what the code system is. I don't know what I have licensed. I'll tell you what I'll do as a temporary measure. I'll copy some of their codes and displays. I'll put it in my own code system and it'll just get me going. That blows up on us later. Big bomb. It's blown up on us a number of times with editors, authors of specifications who've just gone, I'll just hack it. We don't approve of that behaviour, and I spend lots of time cleaning up the mess that creates. You do not steal codes from other people and claim that they're HL7 codes or your own codes. I just wanted to underline that because it's tempting process-wise to do that, but it creates a great deal of technical debt. And the last thing I wanted to say about vocabulary is we've taken it for granted here that you know how to edit code systems and value sets. And that won't be on the subject list tomorrow, because the subject list for the vocabulary discussion tomorrow is how do you find the right codes to use? So to my knowledge, there's one code system editor that lets you edit code systems without just editing XML or JSON directly. And that's the FHIR toolkit. Does it let you do code systems, does it? Oh, there you go. I didn't know it did code systems. There's a number of editors that will edit value sets.
Edit somebody else's code system.
But if you're authoring the code,
Like I use CDC local code systems.
yeah, if you're authoring the code system because you are actually functioning as the authority for the codes, which we recommend against, you should find some other alternative. But that assumes that there is some other alternative, and in fact, sometimes there's not, and so you will end up authoring your own code system. In that case, then you will need either to edit the XML directly or use a code system editor, of which there apparently are two. When it comes to value sets, you have much more options. I think there's about 5 value set editors. There's a wiki page which lists all the tools, which we will get to up here, which lists all the different value set editors that there are so that you can edit value sets. Yes, and as for VSAC, we talked about that before. They have to figure out their password issue. Okay, any more questions about what I've just said? Now I can see that there is one.
Thank you. So, what's your, in your crystal ball? Is there any thought being given to code set owners hosting their own terminology, repository that might take HL7 out of the middle of all that? Is there any thought about that?
We love it when terminology authorities decide that they're going to handle all that themselves and we don't have to. So, for instance, what happened in the beginning, we said, well, we need to use LOINC. So I wrote a LOINC page in the FHIR spec, which describes how to use LOINC in FHIR resources. And then I wrote a bunch of FHIR terminology services that run on tx.fire.org, which do LOINC services. But then LOINC decided that they wanted to get in on the game, and so LOINC own the formal LOINC code system resource and publish that, and they also have fire.loinc.org, which is a set of operational LOINC terminology services that just expose LOINC, and that's kind of the canonical, the reference LOINC implementation against which other servers would be assessed. We're in the same process with SNOMED, in that more and more of the services are moving over to the SNOMED community or SNOMED International itself. We haven't decided how much of the SNOMED content will move out of the FHIR spec, because we're like, how do you use SNOMED in FHIR? So maybe that would be, SNOMED would have a page saying how to use SNOMED in FHIR, or we would have the page. So we have those ongoing discussions about that, but SNOMED have a nominal commitment to put up the terminology services. If we turn to, I don't know, let's pick randomly and say AMA, it would just fine if AMA said, right, we're going to take it on, we're going to publish the terminology services, we're going to publish a page that describes all the things you need to know when you want to use AMA code sets with FHIR terminology services, and you want to come and talk to us about what it is, all the things you need to know. We would love that. That would be just sensational. My crystal ball tells me that it's, to this point, it's an incredibly tough discussion to have with the terminology owner, because it immediately runs into the lawyers going, no, you can't have anything, which is just a silly discussion. But they don't understand the game that we're in, and they're just cutting their nose off to spite their face or something. That's the lawyers. And then the other is that it's, so far, it's just, it doesn't have anywhere to land in the relevant organisations, and so my crystal ball is cloudy.
I'd like to help make it more clear. We should talk.
Graham, when you say that the code system, bring it into HL7, that means to use in the guides, but it doesn't necessarily mean for the organizations to use that are implementing the standard, right?
Right, so you can do one of several things. So for instance, SNOMED, David said before that international specifications don't reference SNOMED normatively, as in required value sets, but we have one that does, which is IPS, because there's an arrangement between the IPS community and SNOMED that SNOMED will license the set of IPS codes for free use everywhere. So IPS does use SNOMED as required value sets. Right, that's a specific agreement around that. And so in that case, SNOMED actually licensed through HL7 all of the users to use those set of SNOMED codes directly without needing any further licensing. So that is possible, but mostly all we say is we publish how you use the code system and some example codes so you can see how to use it. And we may or may not publish expansions on those code systems. And whether we do or not, we haven't licensed any users to use them. You need to go off and make your own arrangements. So it's when all of the possibilities have happened already. I think they're all of the ones, but maybe someone will invent something new for us to deal with. But you basically go into negotiations with the IP holder. We don't want to take their IP. We just want to help people use it. And where we land depends on the balance of politics and money and community. That's what we're trying to do, is get the best balance.
There's a super complicated thing I've been wondering about with respect to past the publishing of the IG, now in a situation where you have a server where you've got data that's using these codes, and you as an organization may have a license to do that. But now there's all these apps that come along and extract the data for the patient to be able to use. Who is responsible once you do a GET and you pick up data that has CPT codes or UB whatever 04 and these other lockdown proprietary code systems that you have to pay for, when you're releasing the data to the consumer, maybe even a consumer mediated exchange, I'm going to pick up my record and I'm going to give it to somebody else. Who's responsible for paying for the use of that coded data?
That's a great question. and I'm waiting for that to blow up. There's little technical bombs all over the place. For a long while, CPT was licensed such that you couldn't allow any of the licensed material to leave continental USA. It's kind of fun when you're in the cloud world. And of course, patients live in the cloud world, or consumers live in the cloud world, but I think that's changed now, so that you don't have to constrain the licensed material to the United States continental borders, or I think Hawaii was included. But it's kind of fun because, you know, I could get CPT on my computer while I was here temporarily, but I couldn't take it home. And of course, all my terminology services run in the cloud somewhere.
Yeah. And what's nice is,
Yeah,
you know,
well-
you open up your app, you're on vacation in Paris, you open up your app because you've had an accident in Paris, need to go to a doctor's, and the CPT codes obviously won't travel to that app because it will know.
Yeah, it's a definite jurisdictional boundary that is enforced on the internet. It's good at that. But more generally, this just kills me. Anybody who's in the business of providing IP service, knowledge services to the health community, who thinks that they make money by selling access to it, are in the wrong business. But you know, that's a personal position. It's not a corporate position of HL7.
Okay. All right, now that we've got the broad concepts on how to use code systems and all of that, let's teach you how to make your own. You've always wanted to do this, right? No, you haven't. You've wanted to use HL7 licensed ones and existing ones. You do not want to write your own. You do not want to create a code system because in every case, a code system exists to cover your use case. No. If I believed that, I wouldn't have this slide. So, the code system resource is normative, which is a lovely thing. So it shouldn't change too much over the next few years. Notice that I said shouldn't, not won't. A code system resource is, according to its definition, used to declare the existence of a code system and its properties. So if you are creating your own code system from scratch, because very simply there is no code system to handle your use case, you create a code system resource. Now, you can create really small ones with 2 codes in them, because that's your choice is, you know, left or right. And so far, there's no left or right code system in HL7. I don't know. Yeah, I know there is one.
There's plenty of them.
There's plenty of them. I'm just, you know, facetious example. To do this, it has some basic elements, the identifying URL, and you can actually declare a version if needed. Left or right doesn't need a version. As far as I know, there's been no other sides declared. Key properties of such as concept permanence, compositional grammar, and if the codes are case sensitive. Normally codes are. You want to make sure that the codes are in lowercase. Lowercase is lovely. But you can have mixed case, or you can have uppercase, or you can just say, I don't care. I'll use them as I get them. What filters you can use. As I showed you with LOINC, there can be a lot of different filters. So you can define which operations, which filters can be used, and how to filter them. The concept properties, obviously, the actual concepts and how they work. In addition, you can list all or some of the codes, along with their properties and designations. So you don't have to, if it's an example code system, obviously you don't have to list every possible code because people aren't supposed to use them all. They're supposed to create their own. Code system resources can also be used as supplements, so an extension to an existing code set. And with existing designations or properties, so you can actually add these to an existing. Let me show you one. Now this is a simple example. It has 2 codes. And it's a very, very simple version. It doesn't go into some of the depth because I didn't want to make it reach down to here. It's already small enough type. So as you can see, it starts off with the ID value because all things FHIR need IDs. The URL where it'll be found. In this case, it is part of a IG, so it's local. The name and title, the status, which is draft, whether it is experimental, so won't go into that right now. That's something that needs to be discussed at length. A description, content, whether this is a part or complete set, and then the code concepts with their code, display, and definition. Now, once you have that, you need a value set, because you can't reference a code system directly. You want to talk to a value set. So, concepts in a value set are the code system. So it has all the same elements. So you need to set the ID, you need to set the URL, all the things that are part of most resources. If you're including a code system itself, so you can, in your value set, you can say, give me everything. So your code system can be millions of codes. You can incorporate all of SNOMED if that's what you're into. There will be limited, when you render this in your IG or elsewhere, it will show you 2,000 codes and stop. So if you include all of SNOMED's CT, you will get 2,000 SNOMED codes on your display page, and it'll stop, but it will say that's all it could do, because it would be kind of pointless to list every code in SNOMED on a web page, but fun. Or you can list very specific codes from the system, and you can put in alternate descriptions. So if you need a code, you can put a description that better matches your use case, and it will still be echoed back to that code. Now, selecting codes by property, so filtering the code. So rather than saying, I want to use code X, code Y, code Z, you can do it. Go ahead, Lisa.
That's super dicey. I mean, to put an alternate description of what the concept means from what the code system intends.
It can be,
Super dicey thing to do.
it absolutely is, but it is possible.
Explain the entire concept.
Oh, wait, we have Graham.
There's several good reasons. So there's several good reasons to be doing this. There's, of course, some really bad reasons to be doing this, but we'll assume that you know what the bad reasons could be. The good reasons are, first of all, the code system doesn't give you any display. For instance, composite concepts, using a post-coordinational grammar, or just code systems didn't have any display in the first place. Second is you're changing languages. The third is that you have, and this is really common actually, your displays are good description of the concept for the entire value set, for the entire code system, but you have a value set that restricts the concept to the set of concepts to a particular subset. And it's just a observational tax on the user to have a full set of the full display when a bunch of the stuff is actually basically denormalized out into the label on the input that they're going to have. So my favorite example of this is a bunch of drug codes in Australia where the codes, the full displays, are 500 plus characters long. But in the actual context of use, 400 of those characters are just irrelevant. They're just irrelevant to the user because they're known things about. You don't need to know that this is the actual medication pack. This is just beginning to get into it, but you know it's a medication pack because you're picking a medication pack. So that's another reason why you would actually want to replace the display, because the full display for the concept is context independent and you're in a context. And finally, and this is where you start getting dangerous, then you get into the whole clinical argument about just exactly what are you describing here, and you have two different people. You have a community that passionately disagrees with a community that maintains the terminology about how something should be described, and they can defend that they're not actually redefining the concept. That's the tricky bit. But so there's a bunch of valid reasons why you would provide your alternate description.
All right. Okay. The other way to do it, and this will work, when you're working with SNOMED, when you're working with, especially with LOINC, doing it by the property. So you're filtering on the specific properties. So you select the property. In this case, the property is component. An operation, now there's lots of them, and they are described in the documentation, so I'm not going to go into all of them, but equals or is a, in, regex. If you're, again, if you like regular expressions, we can help you with that. and then the value you're looking for. So as example, component equals sodium will give you all the sodium-based LOINC codes. Now, just to show you what that looks like, some simple ones. So to bring everything in from the condition category on US Core, that's all you need. Just include, system value, include. Brings everything in. That's it. Including only the ones you need. So you bring in your condition category code, and you say, I only need this code. This is the only one you're allowed to use. Yeah, these were handy. Leave me alone. And then this is the more exciting one. If you're including from this is pulling in, I stole this from somebody else. So condition status, you can say, I want all of the property, the concepts where it is an unconfirmed code. And that will go out and only those that match. All right? So, you got that? Yeah? Great, make me one. I would like each of you to make me a value set. This value set will use the days of the week, except we're talking with a doctor here, and this clinician only works Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday because he golfs on Wednesdays. So I would like you each to create a value set resource that gives those dates only. All right? So I'll give you about 10 minutes to go through. The best place to look up what a value set looks like is either steal it from somewhere else or look at the FHIR core spec. That will show you what it looks like. I've given you, so we'll give you about, I don't know, 10 minutes to write up that value set. All right, that's your 10 minutes. How many are done? All right, how many of you created your own code system? Really? None of you created your own code system? I'm very proud of you. Because, of course, FHIR has days of the week. And, you know, the rule I've been beating into your heads, don't create a code system if you don't need to. And as you can see, I did this wrong because I was doing this late at night and wasn't thinking. And I used the display names instead of the codes when I selected the codes. So I apologize. So, yes, so code should be mon, to, wed, or not wed, because wed. And you can do this by inclusion or exclusion. And that's very simple. All right? Yes?
I was using SNOMED Mondays through Friday.
That works too.
So the code system, I would just put SNOMED. Would that be SNOMED for the value set? Or
No. Well, you wouldn't want to include all of SNOMED because that would kill you.
you'll take all of
Yeah, if you just say include SNOMED.
He says, yeah, he says include
I already gave away the chocolate.
system SNOMED with the concepts listed. Yes.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so by having this like you did up there,
Yeah. So as you can see, I used the
by
FHIR one. You used
enumerating concepts, you're asking for that subset. If you didn't enumerate the concepts, you'd pull the whole bloody thing in.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that works perfectly. So the big lesson here was don't create your own days of the week code set. Don't create your own code set until you've really searched out and found one or found that there isn't one. All right? Creating a value set's easy. You can do it, like I said, very specifically. You can say, I only want these codes. You can do it by, by function, by saying, hey, only these that match these conditions, be it equals regex or member of, and so on and so forth.
What's the best way to discover the available code systems that HL7 is already developed?
What a wonderful question. How did I know someone? Wait, I have to think. Thank you for reminding me to put that up. Oh, silly thing. Let's see if, hold on, let me drag it over. What I wonder. There we go. hl7.org/FHIR/terminologies-systems HTML. What? Oh, Control Plus, sorry. Zoom is, but yeah. You want to be able to read it too? This lists all of the code systems that FHIR is aware of, or has licensing to, or knows about, or...
Is this written down somewhere? I mean, other than on your screen, is it in one of the slides?
It will be. I did forget to put the URL in the slide. I will add it and on the externals page. You can go through this. It's wonderful. It has the external, those that are internal, oops, those that are internal to fire, those that are external to fire, and the HL7V3, and even the HL7V2 tables. Please be advised, not all HL7V2 and V3 tables are part of FHIR. If you have a table that's not part of it, talk to your vocabulary facilitator.
Here you just, you can find the days of the week, right? So you can go to
You can, I believe it's here.
If I click on it,
Oh,
Search, no, I mean, how to a search on page days.
oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
It's in the internal.
There it is. Days a week. It's normative. It's wonderful. Yeah, that's how I tend to work as well. You know, a lot of point Google, you know, FHIR and whatever you're looking for, will find what you need, and that goes into the code system there. Oops. Oh yeah, on the page it had didn't have the hyphen name. All right, well, good plan is then to always make sure you click through to make sure you get the right one. All right. That ends my jaunt through the world of. Uh-oh, Alt tab. Let me get all the way down there. Oops. That.
I think, so before you shift off, I think there's a big, deep, dark corner here about thinking about interoperability, right? Because the IG is not just solving your little use case. And Graham used the phrase, don't think of your IG as just an island of capability. The ultimate goal is interoperability.
Yeah.
And you need to worry about what does everybody else do in this space already? And you really need to exhaustively think about that beforehand, so that if you're going to, let's say I want to record a certain type of encounter,
Yep.
you can't just go and make up, I mean, you can just go up and say, I'm going to make up encounter types. If there's already a large world out there that's thinking about encounter types with a certain set of codes from, you know, and there's value sets that are associated with that.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to be spitting stuff out that doesn't ultimately marry up with and isn't useful with other data that's categorized using a different value set for the encounter types.
Absolutely true. And that's why the community is so important, right? Because especially when you deal with value sets and code systems, you may go down a wonderful rabbit hole of trying to create your own, and your community may pipe up and say, what are you doing? This doesn't match anywhere outside your tunnel. And that's a horrible thing. It is important that everything you do as part of the building process is seen by the community. All right? And that's what comments are for. That's what, you know, the formal processes are for, but that's also what, you know, actually reaching out to your community and building this is for. Right? Build your community, make sure that what you're doing, is, you know, actually addressing the bigger use case, but also that it doesn't break someone else's. Yes?
I just have a question about premise. So I'm operating off the premise that FHIR is a loosely based semantics mapping and not ISO 11179 to that level of semantic mapping. So that when we do stuff like this, and we have these terminologies, obviously if they're in a code system, that's fine. We get that. We understand what the code systems are. There's CUIs behind it, all of that kind of thing. But when there's not a code system, or we're using words interchangeably, like observation or assessed need, that's where you run into that semantics piece. I think, Lisa, to your talk, where you may define assessed need completely different than I do, or even observation completely different than I do, and you don't have a code for your observation, and I don't have it for mine either. Because they're not identical. They're observation on
Yeah.
Well,
the elements. It's
you,
different observations than-
you covered several subjects there.
Yeah, past that.
I just want to know the premise.
So, well, from a 11179 perspective, I think we go much further than they do in terms of describing the content. I started with 11179 underneath. I mean, if you don't want to know about it, you just look at the resource and go ahead and use the resource. But if you go and start digging, you'll see that we've got I started by saying every element will be defined using 11179, and I just kept finding things they don't do in 11179 and we can do. But on the other hand, it's only can do, and so we have lots and lots of ways to define an element that really you can go to town and define them. Unfortunately, the community basically doesn't get you to that point very often. So in that sense, we very often can't get to that level of magic semantic interoperability where everybody knows what everybody means and everybody means the same thing. It doesn't very often happen. And so while we can go much further than 11179 lets you go, we mostly don't go there. And so it's kind of, you got to think of it that way. Obviously, what we think is right is for the community, for you to go as far as you can get your community to agree to. And agreeing to terms and codes is a hard thing to get people to agree to, so we very often don't manage to do that. And quite often too, in the circumstances we work in, because our deal is interoperability, if you have two existing systems or institutions that use those words differently, they're like, well, we're not changing for you, bucko. So then that's where you hit the line. You can't sort that out unless they're willing to sort that out. And for me, it's a journey where institutions, there's a lot of hype out there about FHIR and what it achieves, and institutions say, and a lot of people are thinking that we've solved all the problems, but of course we haven't solved the problems that we can't solve. And those are actually the big problems. So it's just a matter of climbing the mountain, standing on top of the mountain going, hey, something more to climb that's even harder. That's a scary thought, isn't it? There's so much work to be done yet. But for me, my goal is to have the ubiquitous availability of information to rub everyone's noses in the fact that there's still such a lot of things we don't agree about. And so that's will be the next frontier. It's not like we're going to run out of stuff to do. But in the meantime, anything that you can agree to in a form of a glossary really becomes a code system. And so you write it down in a code system and then you can compute with that. And in that sense, we actually go further because a lot of frameworks just say we want to get to a human level set of definitions, and we say no. And if you're going to get that far, I'd actually write them down in a computable fashion, and then you can reuse them in more ways. And so, again, we go a lot further, or at least we let people go a lot further, but actually getting them to go further, that's always the hard part. And then, Lisa, the current situation is a significant frustration for me because we have a lot of meaningful discussion about reuse of profiles and extensions. We don't have great ways to reuse profiles and extensions. I will be showing some tomorrow in my tutorial when I talk about reviewing an IG and actually looking at what profiles there are defined and what options you have for finding those and extensions. And actually we have much better options for extensions and profiles. But we don't even have the discussion about value sets as a whole. It's just too hard. We invested in the FHIR registry, which you haven't looked at all day because it's just not working. And that's, for me, I had so many things to do before this meeting that the registry never made the list. But we need to get the registry working so that you could look for relevant or related value sets through the registry and know what other people are doing and reusing But the one thing that we haven't begun to master when it comes to shared definitions is conflicting life cycles. We don't even know how to think about that. So it's going to continue to be an aspiration rather than an actuality. Even if we knew what the duplicate definitions were, I don't think we would know how to actually get rid of them.
All right. Okay, that ends this.